Okay.
Oh, here, I'll mute you 1 second. All right. Well, thank you all for being here. I originally had this as a webinar, but I kind of wanted to take the opportunity to be able to be a little bit more interactive. Webinars are always a little bit awkward for me because I feel like I'm just talking to myself. But I will allow you all to unmute at the end so that you can ask me questions. And even throughout the presentation, I'll pause for a moment so that you guys can actually stop and go outside for a little bit. I know it's a Zoom meeting, but if you have the opportunity to look outside, we're going to give you a chance to look outside. But I'm really happy to have you all here today. So I'll go ahead and start my screen. But welcome everyone, and welcome to Phenology Week. Once again, my name is Samantha Brewer. I'm the Volunteer Engagement Coordinator for the USA National Phenology Network. And the purpose of this presentation is to kind of show some of you folks how to use Nature's Notebook, or how to be able to document phenology, or what the heck even is phenology. You may have heard of it, or you may have heard of Nature's Notebook, but aren't quite sure how to get started. So I'm going to be able to get you started and start on some resources so that you can start collecting data on the plants and animals that are nearest and dearest to you. So we're going to start you off, though, with a little bit of interaction. You should be able to have a chat feature on your screen. But what does spring mean to you? Because today is actually technically the first day of spring, all right? Many of us may have been seeing spring conditions for a while now, right? Some of you, it might be a certain bird is arriving, or certain plants are leafing out. For me in Tucson, I'll start seeing reptiles around Tucson. When I know it's warming up, I start seeing little lizards appearing more frequently on the fences, and a lot of people start asking what species of snake they're seeing. So go ahead and put in the chat, what does spring mean to you guys? Oh no, but I don't know how to see my chat on this mode. Oh, but that's okay. Go ahead and still put it in the chat anyway for what spring means to you guys. So here at the USA National Phenology Network, we are a network of individuals, groups, organizations, collaborators, schools, all people working together to collect, store, and share phenology data and information. These data that people collect through Nature's Notebook can be used for informing decisions, right? So if you're trying to decide when you should plant certain flowers to make sure that there's nectar available for pollinators. Advancing science, right? So allowing us to enhance our understanding and ways of collecting data. Communicating and connecting. What Nature's Notebook and the USA National Phenology Network comes down to is connecting people all across the United States to phenology, the plants and animals around them, and how they're connected to the wider range of where these plants may be appearing, what time of year they're starting to bloom or leaf out. And then also creating an equitable and inclusive network. So we try to provide resources and opportunities and a platform so that anyone can participate, be able to contribute to the scientific process, and learn more about the natural world in their area. So today, this is kind of a very basics course. I'm going to show you more resources at the end for how you can get some more advanced knowledge for learning how to use Nature's Notebook. But we're going to start with phenology. What actually is phenology? It's a word I've been using a lot today. How we can use phenology. We're going to have an introduction to phenophases and what phenophases mean, and how you use phenophases to document phenological changes of plants and animals in your area. I'll introduce Nature's Notebook, which is our citizen science platform that can be used to record data on seasonal changes of plants and animals. And we're going to do some practicing of collecting phenology data. Oh, I found my chat. Sorry, 1 second. I did find the chat because a different bar had come up. Oh, all right. Flowers, leaves, birds, wildflowers, globe mallows, poppies, desert blooms. Oh, it's nice that we're having so many, that we have people from the desert. It's funny, when I first started here, I was like, oh, this is how plants work. But man, desert plants are funny. So what is phenology though? Phenology is a word that nobody often knows, but actually everybody really knows what it is. The root word for phenology comes from the Greek pheno, and what it means is kind of to show or to bring to light or to make appear. So even then with that definition, it's like, okay, it appears, but what's appearing? And what phenology is, though, you have that ology, so you know it's the study of. But what phenology is the study of the cyclical life cycles of plants and animals throughout the year. And that's why that to bring to light or to make appear, where that really comes in, because throughout the year, right? When you think about springtime, today's the first day of spring, you're going to see the appearance of plants coming out. You'll see animals waking up from their dormancy. Birds and butterflies maybe migrating, laying eggs, and raising their young. So it's documenting when these life stages appear throughout the year and the timing of these life stages that appear and how that's related to their environment, because plants and animals are all living things that are in tune with the world around them. And they're all responding to what's happening. So when you go from winter to spring, you'll generally have very cold temperatures and climates. But as it starts to get warmer, the plants and animals are sensing those changes, and they know when it's safe for their flowers to appear, or they know when it's safe to wake up and start foraging for food. With climate change, we can see changes in plants phenology, right? If you have warmer climates, if it gets warmer earlier in the spring, the plants don't have a calendar. They're not like, oh, well, today is March 19th, so it's the first day of spring. Plants are paying attention to what's going on around them, right? So they may start to leaf out or bloom earlier. Those young leaves or those young blooms can be very, very sensitive to cold temperatures. So if they start blooming too early, it's still actually wintertime, they could face a cold snap and can experience a lot of damage. So it's really important that researchers are able to understand leaf out, bloom of different plants, when different animals appear, and see how they get affected by changes in the world around them. And just as a note, what I'm going to be talking about today is mostly a very Western view of phenology, right? Because humans have been on this earth for eons, or however the timing goes with geology. But we've been around for a long, long time, right? And we've also adapted to the world around us. And many of our cultures are based in phenology and seasonal changes, and when we celebrate holidays, and when we're supposed to plant our crops, and when different animals are migrating through that we can hunt, right? And so I do like to put a land acknowledgement here that the USA National Phenology Network is throughout the United States, which is a traditional and unceded territory of hundreds of tribes and indigenous peoples who have a very close relationship with this land and who are very closely tied to phenology, and whose culture and livelihoods revolve around the seasonal timing of plants and animals and the gifts that they give. And so with phenology, and once again, very Western view of phenology, right? But if you're looking at changes in ecology and looking at how species are responding to maybe an invasive species in an area, or a change in climate, or a change in weather patterns, being able to document and see when the changes of these appearances occur can help us really get a sense of what's going on in major ecosystems. Because even if you're just watching a redbud tree in your backyard, that one redbud tree is just a piece of the larger puzzle of the ecosystem that you're documenting these changes in. And it's not just, looking at the trees every week and seeing what's going on. Researchers are able to use this data. So researchers can use it to see if if, for example, they're restoring a native ecosystem, right? But you're not 100% sure which plants you should plant and where to make sure that you're managing for certain pollinators. You might want to know the timing of different blooms so that you're always having nectar available for whatever pollinators are in your area. Being able to manage for wildfires, right? Patterns of when plants are green and wet versus when they're dry. Invasive species such as bufflegrass here in Arizona, if you're managing a weed or an invasive species or an invasive insect, there's certain life periods that are more susceptible to treatments than others. So you want to make sure you're timing your treatment when it's going to be most effective. Knowing when to grow crops, knowing if drought's affecting crops, and the timing of when you should plant things or when you should collect seeds. Allergies, which is like an unfortunate consequence of springtime, but if you're an allergy sufferer and the allergies are appearing earlier and having longer seasons than usual, it's important for us to know for human health. And yeah, insects, invasive insects, pest species, trying to manage so that you can know when you can most effectively mitigate for a damaging species. So we'll go back to the chat because really we don't want to listen to me talking for an hour straight. I will do it, but I prefer to hear from you guys too. But sometimes phenology is something that we've lived with our whole lives that we've taken for granted. Maybe there's something that you do either at your home or maybe as part of your favorite holidays, or just that certain fruit that's in season that you can't wait for. So go ahead and put in the chat, what are some ways that you like to document seasonal changes or things that you notice in your life that are closely tied to seasonal changes that maybe you look forward to? For me personally, how I document seasonal changes, especially here in Arizona, it's an awkward transition in the spring because it's trying to outfit my kids for school because it's cold in the mornings, but it's hot in the middle of the day. And so you have those awkward transitions from the puffy clothes to half puffy clothes to the not puffy clothes. Taking pictures on walks of local nature escapes. Yes, absolutely, right? Some of us really look forward to, maybe if you're around the Flagstaff area or the East Coast, looking forward to major color changes in the fall. That's absolutely one of those. Oh, the birds in the bird bath in the spring. If any of you have bluebird nest boxes and you just look forward to your little bluebirds coming back too and having their babies, love the birds coming to the bird baths. All winter, my hummingbirds were really active this winter, which was really good. Oh, you're in Santa Fe. That's awesome. Oh, yes. Hiking, yes. When do you want to go hiking, right? When's the right time to do it? And if you can do it in that sweet spot too, where it's not too busy yet, looking for monarchs and welcoming hummingbirds and Flagstaff. Absolutely. I love looking for monarch caterpillars. It's one of my favorite things too. Right. So there's lots of ways that we think about how we pay attention to seasonal changes in plants and animals. But how can researchers actually document phenology, right? How do you actually document when did the flowers start blooming? Or when did the caterpillars start appearing? Or at what life stage are these plants and animals experiencing at different times of year? And there's kind of these major milestones in phenology that you can observe and document, right? With animals, for example, you can observe animals' activities, right? If you have some milkweed plants, you can see if you have monarchs flying from flower to flower collecting nectar. You can see if mason bees are building nests. And you can see if, those bluebirds come and start staking out their territories, right? You'll hear more songs. So those are all activities that can be documented. Reproduction as well. You may see breeding behaviors in animals. You may see butterflies laying eggs. When I first started documenting with Nature's Notebook, I was like, oh, I'll never see a butterfly like actually laying eggs. And now I've seen several monarchs like actually at milkweeds laying eggs. So you actually get to kind of see when you're out there, actually like spending a little time and just watching the plants and animals around you, you get to kind of see these phases happening, right? Reproduction as well, when the birds start building nests and laying eggs. And then development as well, right? So let's say, oh, I saw my monarchs first appearing, I saw them laying eggs, and then you can actually watch them develop too. Caterpillars take several days to go from those tiny, tiny first instars to the larger ones. If you're lucky, you may find one that's developed into a chrysalis. With those baby birds too, right? Mom's incubating the eggs. You can document when those eggs hatched, when they were feeding the nestlings, and when those nestlings fledged. And so with animals, and especially when we're documenting and we're learning about life stages, it's often really easy to relate to animals, right? Because we are animals, we're large, bald animals, walking around bipedally. But we can relate to a lot of what animals do because they're very similar to our own experiences. But plants also go through like an activity stage, growth stage, development stage, reproductive stage. And they're all still phases that you can document, right? In the spring, are you seeing the leaves appearing on your trees? Are the flowers blooming yet? And have those flowers been pollinated? And do you see fruits and have those fruits ripened to be able to pass those seeds along? So these are still all very observable life stages that if you go outside, you would actually be able to notice these things. And so that's what researchers do, especially with phenology. You go outside. Are there leaves on the trees? Are there flowers there? Are there fruits? Right? And when you go out regularly, you can document, okay, no leaves were out last year, or no leaves were out last year. No leaves were out last week, but now I'm seeing leaves. Now I'm seeing the flowers blooming. Now I'm seeing the fruits appear. And that data then can be tied to climate data, right? So it's like, okay, this year, my first leaf came out. Let's do it today, right? March 19th. But last year, maybe my leaves came out March 5th, right? Has there been a change in climate? Has there been a change in rain patterns? And so being able to collect that long-term data year after year and seeing those differences of those timing of those different life stages can help us better understand how climate change can affect them, or how invasive plants can affect them, or how our own human behaviors can affect them. So now we'll get into the meat of it with Nature's Notebook. So Nature's Notebook is our citizen science program that we've developed here at the USA-NPN. People have been collecting data through Nature's Notebook for about, well, I know we've been around for 15 years, but I think it's around 13 to 15 years as well that people have been using Nature's Notebook to document those seasonal changes of plants and animals around them. Because I'm here in Tucson, Arizona, and most of my coworkers are here in Tucson, Arizona, not all of us, but we certainly can't go all across the United States and document these changes. Nature's Notebook is how volunteers, thousands of volunteers all across the United States, are all in their backyards or at their nature centers or at their schools, going out weekly and looking at their plants. Are they seeing leaves? Are they seeing flowers? Are they seeing fruits? So if you have a phone on you, you may be watching on your phone, but if you do have your phone on you, you can go ahead and open your camera app. And if you put your camera up to that QR code, you can tap on it and it will actually take you to your app store, either the Google Play Store or the iPhone App Store, where you'll be able to download Nature's Notebook. Don't worry if you can't do it today, and don't worry if you have a few questions as we go through this. We are recording this presentation, and I'll be sticking around afterwards to answer any questions you have. But sometimes I'm really a fan of learning by doing. So go ahead and download that Nature's Notebook app if you're able to. If you're not able to yet, it's really okay. But a bit later. And to use Nature's Notebook, what you're going to do is, like, you've downloaded your app, right? You're going to be prompted to make an account. So you can make your account. You'll have your email address or your username that you'll make and your password. And that's where you'll be able to create your sites. And so when you think about your site, think about this is your research site, right? Your research site can be your backyard, it could be your front yard, it could be your favorite park that's down the street, or maybe it's your favorite hiking trail. What you'll notice on the app is that there's going to be a little a map where you can actually select where you want your site to be. Now, when you're choosing your Nature's Notebook site, you want to make sure it's a place that you can go to regularly. So if I was like, I want to go to my mom's house in Seattle and document those changes, that would not be very practical because I'm not there very often. But the mesquite tree in my front yard is my mesquite tree in my front yard. I can go outside, I can drink my coffee, I can do my New York Times puzzles, and I can document if there's leaves appearing on my mesquite tree, or if any birds have come in, or if I'm finally seeing my first fruits of the season. So it's somewhere that you want to see regularly because you're going to be documenting the same plants through time. And it's important to document the same plants through time because you may have, like, let's say you're in my yard, right? You've got your 2 mesquite trees here. Each plant is an individual, right? They might have slight variations of their timing. And so when you're doing the same plant through time, especially if you're able to document that plant for several years, you're kind of accounting for that individual variation. And you're making sure, like, yep, this mesquite tree, this is when it was leafing out this year. This is when it leafed out last year. And don't worry, we'll have time for questions too. Once you have created your site, you can then pick your plants and animals. So if you're on your app, you can decide, or you can add one of over 1,700 plants and animals that we have available through Nature's Notebook. And the reason why we don't have, like, every single plant and animal possible is because we actually create individual protocols and individual guides for each phenophase, or each stage of the plant's life cycle, depending on a plant. Because a red maple tree is going to leaf out slightly differently than a pine tree is. Pine tree is going to have different phenophases, or different ways of fruiting, or different ways of producing, or not producing pollen, but spreading pollen. So if there's a plant that you know in your yard that you would like to document, let's say you have a red bud tree, or let's say you have let's say you have a red maple tree, or let's say you have a mesquite tree, right? You can search on the top to be able to find your plant and add it. Once again, if you're not ready for that, that's totally okay. With the plant, you're going to be watching the same plant through time. But what I also really love about Nature's Notebook is that you can also document the seasonal changes of animals. So if you do have a bluebird box, oh man, you definitely want to add bluebirds there, right? Because you can a bluebird box is so nice because you have that home for your bluebirds, they're cavity nesters, and you can kind of regularly expect when they're going to be checking out the house, when to bring nesting materials, when they'll be feeding the babies. But even if you don't have something like a bluebird house, let's say you have a milkweed pollinator garden, you could still add monarchs, because let's say you want to see if monarchs are coming to your milkweed and when the monarchs are coming to your milkweed. You can add those monarchs, and you can document if you're seeing the caterpillars, if you're seeing adults, if you happen to find a pupa, and the timing for when your milkweed are leafing out and flowering, when those monarchs are appearing and going through their life stages. So go ahead, if you have an animal that you would like to add, go ahead and add an animal. Once again, if you are not ready to open the app and start all this, it's okay to not be ready, because you can come back later and you can always reach out to us if you have any questions. And I'm also going to provide you with more resources on how to get started with Nature's Notebook at the end. All right, so collecting data. So you've created your site, right? I've got my backyard, I've got my mesquite tree, I've got my Lucy's warblers with my Lucy warbler nest box, and I'm ready to document some phenology, right? The way you use Nature's Notebook is you're basically answering yes or no questions of what you're seeing at your site in your plants and your animals at any particular time. So when you go out there to your maple tree, do you see leaves on it? Yes or no? Are there flowers on it? Yes or no? Are those flowers open? Yes or no? And is there pollen? Yes or no? And then in the fall, did you see fruits appear? When did the fruits ripen? And when are your leaves changing colors? So what you're doing is you're kind of taking a snapshot in time of data of what's happening with your plants. Because maybe this week, right? If I go out to a saguaro, let's say I want to document saguaro's flowering for our Flowers for Bats campaign. I would go out right now and I would say, nope, I do not see any flowers on the saguaro. And next week, I'm probably not going to see any flowers on my saguaro, right? So I open my Nature's Notebook app. I say that there's not going to be any flowers, or there's no flowers this week. I go back next week. No, I don't see any flowers. But the week after that, I go back to my saguaro, and yes, I do see flowers. And that's where you're collecting that timing, is even when there's nothing going on, right? We all love to go outside and see the butterflies and see the flowers, right? But right now is this perfect transition time, because then you get to capture, no, there were no breaking leaf buds. And now I do see breaking leaf buds. That data gets tied to climate data. And then when you have thousands of people across the United States collecting these data, scientists can get that bigger picture of what's going on with the plants and animals in your area. All right, so you're like, yeah, that's easy enough. I know what a leaf is. Ha, that's what I thought too when I first started. I was like, surely I know what a leaf was. And then you go outside and you see this. So you're in your Nature's Notebook app and you're like, do you see breaking leaf buds? Yes or no? And you're like, I have no idea what I'm seeing here, right? Are you seeing leaves? I have no idea if this counts as a breaking leaf bud or a leaf yet. But fortunately, we do have Phenophase definitions. When you're in your Observe tab in the app, there's like a little eye with a circle. You can click that and you can actually see what is a breaking leaf bud or a leaf. And so, for example, for a red maple, you would say yes for breaking leaf bud if one or more breaking leaf buds are visible in the plant. So leaf bud is considered breaking if you see a green leaf tip visible at the end of the bud, but before the first leaf has unfolded, right? Because you want to have that time of when is it actually the bud is breaking and when is it actually a leaf, right? So then you're even getting the timing of when those buds first opened up, when the leaves start forming out, when the leaves are growing, when they're changing color. So we have specific definitions for each plant and animal for each of those life stages. So for this one, the leaf may appear reddish. So with that knowledge and me just like showing you this plant here, because it's just a 1-hour webinar, what would you say to this? Would you put a yes or a no for a breaking leaf bud for this one? And I don't have to read it out loud. I guess it's all in the chat, but no one's here to judge you guys. Hey, I see some of you are being brave. There we go. But I won't call you out loud, but I am seeing some answers already, right? So would you count this as a breaking leaf bud? And I honestly, I think a lot of you might not be answering because it's hard to say, right? It's kind of like, I don't really know what's going on with this one, but let's make your life a little bit easier. What's a leaf then, right? You're like, I am really not sure if that's a breaking leaf bud. All right, so then we could say, is it a leaf if one or more live unfolded leaves are visible in the plant? So it's unfolded once the entire length of the leaf has emerged from the bud. The stem node or growing stem tip is so that the leaf base is visible at the point of attachment to the leaf stalk, the petiole. right? So if you can see the little point of the leaf and where it's attached to the petiole, that little leaf stalk, then it is considered, you would say yes for leaf, and you would say no for breaking leaf buds, because the breaking leaf buds would just be that little breaking spot. But the leaf would be actually if you're seeing the leaf out on the plant. So what do you guys think? Would this be a breaking leaf bud or would this be a leaf? This seems like a leaf, I see. Breaking leaf bud, leaf. Good. I'm actually really happy that I'm seeing stuff all over for this one, because that's what happens sometimes when you're out there observing these plants. And this is one of the wonderful things I love about observing phenology is I go out there, I'm like, I know what a leaf is. And then I go out there and I'm like, I don't actually know what. But fortunately for this one, it is a leaf. I would not call it a breaking leaf bud. And this one is a leaf because you can actually see the entire leaf. And you can actually see that little attachment to the petiole right there. And so if I was on Nature's Notebook and I went outside and I was like, oh my gosh, what did I see? Then I would say I did not see breaking leaf buds because the leaf buds already broke and it's grown to the point where it's being a leaf. And this is still really important to document because sometimes those phenophases can happen really fast. You'll go out next week and you're like, oh, my buds are swelling, they're going to break soon. And you go out a week later and it's like, oh my gosh, now there's leaves, right? But you're still documenting, even if you miss that breaking leaf bud part. Last week, there were no leaves. And this week, there were leaves. So we know that breaking leaf bud happened within that week's time. And that gives you a really nice, precise time for when these changes occurred. But honestly, y'all, what I really love to say is embrace the question mark. What you'll see also in the Nature's Notebook app is that you have the yes, the no, and the question mark, especially when you're first starting out with phenology and you're first starting out with Nature's Notebook and you're like, I'm so excited to go outside and look at grass grow, which is kind of what you're doing. And somehow it's really fun, but it really is. But embrace that question mark. It's okay to say, I'm not sure if this was a leaf or not. You can always go back and change the data, but also putting in a question mark, it doesn't negatively affect the data at all. It still shows that someone was out there observing, and it still shows that there was likely a transitional phenophase. You just weren't 100% sure which one it is, and that's okay. All right, so we're gonna practice. We're gonna do a practice one together. Oh, and good, I did leave time for you guys to be able to go outside. That we'll do in a moment. So now we have another picture from a red maple. And so do you see breaking leaf buds or do you see leaves based on those definitions that we already went over? Would you call this one a breaking leaf bud or a leaf? Yeah, I see. Oh, wait, I can't tell the answers yet. But I'm seeing a lot more rapid answers this time. And that's actually why I love doing the interactive parts like this, where I can see how quickly you guys are going, because I can definitely sense the uncertainty in the first picture, which I kind of do on purpose. So sorry about that. Because then by the time you see this one, you're like, oh, wait, now I know what that is. And that's what will happen when you go out there, right? You'll be all confident. I know what a leaf looks like. You'll go out there. You're like, oh my gosh, I don't know what a leaf looks like. But you'll go out there again and like, okay, maybe I do actually know what it looks like now. And you'll get better at it. What I also really love about this program, I was a bird person. I studied birds. I only wanted to study birds. I only wanted to look at birds. There were these plants that the birds like lived on. So I took some basic botany courses. But what I really love about phenology is you're stopping and you're watching the same plant through time and you actually get to know it and you actually get to know its little personality and when its leaves are first appearing and when the first flowers come and you start to notice the bees coming and the different birds singing. And it gives you that moment to really connect with the plants and animals in your area. But yes, there's no leaves. This is a breaking leaf bud. So I would say yes for breaking leaf bud, but I would say no for leaves, right? But it looks like those leaves are going to be leaves soon. But once again, when you kind of see it this way, you would be able to tell when that stalk came up. It's so much more obvious. But only when you're able to kind of sometimes look back again and get to know your plant. All right. And then I'm just going to like throw this one out at you guys. Right? Because when you're actually looking, there's so many different phenophases that your plants are going to go through throughout the year, right? And there's so many changes that your plants are going to experience. So sometimes when you first open the Nature's Notebook app, you're like, oh my gosh, look at all these phenophases. But just look at them one step at a time, right? So do you see breaking leaf buds? If I went out and I was looking at my red maple, right? Do I see breaking leaf buds on my red maple? You can say yes or no for breaking leaf buds on this guy. Seem unsure. Oh no. Okay, yes. Excellent. Yes, I see breaking leaf buds, right? So once again, this is definitely a leaf bud. Here's another one right here. We can see that there's no petiole, but you can see the tips of the leaves. This one's a much more closed leaf bud still, but you can see that breaking leaf bud. What about leaves then? Are there any leaves? Like we're not looking at the entire plant right now. We're going basic phenology right here, right? Right. But yep, exactly. No leaves, right? There's no petioles. You're at the breaking leaf bud phase. Maybe there will be leaves next year. So obviously no for leaves. All right. And it's a red maple though. Are you guys seeing flowers? There's leaf buds and there's flower buds on these red maple trees. Yes, right? So you would say yes to flowers. And you would say yes to open flowers. And the reason we do this, because y'all through open flower, you're all ready with the open flowers. You're like, I know what an open flower is. And then you'll go out there and look at flowers and you'll be like, oh, I have no idea what an open flower is. But I'll tell you what an open flower is. Right? So you're saying, yes, I do see flowers, but sometimes you see flower buds and sometimes you see open flowers, right? And that's still the seasonal timing that you can observe, right? If you go out there and they're all closed buds, then you say, yes, I see flowers, but no, they're not open flowers. But then you go out next week, now the flowers are open. You can see those little stamens or pistils or both inside. And it's important for researchers to be able to know the different timing of flower buds and open flowers, because sometimes flowers stay flower buds for a long time. Sometimes there's a different component that's used to open the flowers. And sometimes researchers specifically want to know about open flowers because pollinators can't get pollen from a tightly closed flower, right? So they want to know when is that nectar available for migrating pollinators or local pollinators. But very good with their open flowers. Now, how about fruits? Fruits is always a funny one for me when I'm teaching about fruits and botany. Do you think there's any fruits? You're hesitating again, right? Do you see any fruits on this plant? Ah, no fruits, right? And fruits on a maple tree, I had the picture of them earlier and I should have brought that picture back, are the little, the little whirligig fruits, right? Those fruits get spread by wind. They have the little, they have that, oh, I forgot. There's a word for it. There's a specific word for it that you guys know. Some of you may know. But the fruit is what's ever going to be holding the seeds, right? So often when we think of fruits, we think of apples and we think of oranges, right? But fruits are also cucumbers because they hold seeds. And fruits are also the dandelion, the little puffballs from the dandelions. Those are fruits, right? So the reason why knowing when fruits is important is because that's another important life stage, right? You had your open flowers, the flower got pollinated, and the seed is able to develop and grow with the fruit around it. So that's why you want to see when there's fruits. And this one we had no fruits. And then you may want to know when fruits ripen too. So you know when to collect seeds, when different foods are available for different animals. But there's different questions that could be asked with ripe fruits as well. All right. So then you get out, right? You're like, great, I feel really good about this. And then you get treated to this guy. And you're like, oh, I'm going to be looking at my maple tree and it's way up there and I can like see the flowers with my binoculars. And then you come across this, right? So what would you guys put if this is what you were observing? Would you see breaking leaf buds? This is kind of a hard picture to see, but you can kind of see it in the background there. Yep, I see yes for breaking leaf buds. I see uncertainty, and that's okay. We won't go through them as much. I do see answers for leaves, right? So we see like maybe there's breaking leaf buds. Are there leaves on this, right? The flowers sometimes feel a little vague too, right? When you have these brand new fruits forming, like what is that definition between a flower and a fruit? Generally with the fruit is you're gonna see that swelling. I would count this as yes, a fruit. There may be some, oh yeah, there may be some buds back here that haven't quite fruited yet. That's a possibility. But this one I would say no for breaking leaf buds. I would say yes for leaves because I've got the little, the petiole there. I would say, depending on what's going on here, oh, this flower is kind of withered. That's a big question mark flower for me because we have specific definitions for like what still counts as a flower when the flower dies. But I would definitely see fruits here. But dry fruits are going to be browner and lighter, and they won't be dry yet. But once again, it's okay to just embrace that question mark, especially when you're first starting out. So right now, what I would like you guys to do is now that you've learned some phenophases, right? You've learned a little bit about how Nature's Notebook works. I know not everyone's going to be able to walk outside and not everyone is going to be by a window. But even if you can't go outside, I want y'all just take a minute and get up out of your chairs and stretch because even though an hour-long presentation is not that long, it sometimes feels a little bit long. And go look outside and tell me what, even if you don't, I know the tree exactly, right? You're like, I don't really know if this is a red maple or sugar maple. They're all like trees that birds live in, right? But go outside and what are some phenophases that you can see right out there at this moment? Or look out your window. Or even if you're really not wanting to go outside, you're like, no, I absolutely love Zoom meetings. This is my jam. Just imagine, you know, what the outside world is like, and that's okay. And go ahead and put in the chat, what are you seeing? And I'm glad everyone's taking a minute. I guess I could describe what I'm seeing because I didn't think about the awkward silence. Usually in this part, when I do this course, I have people go into breakout rooms and I make you all talk to each other, but I didn't prepare you for that, so it didn't seem very fair. But I'll tell you what I see outside. I have a kumquat tree out on my porch, and it has leaves, and it has breaking leaf buds, which is kind of cool, actually. And it does not have flowers, and it does not have fruits. And then I also have some clover out there, and I definitely see leaves on my clover. Oh, I see some flowers on my clover. So I got some leaves, I got some flowers. I have a pineapple plant out there because I did the thing where you like cut off the pineapple plant to like grow a new pineapple. It has leaves. I don't have a flower or a fruit yet on that one, but hopefully in a couple years. What do you guys see? Oh, your aspens. Your aspens have leaf buds, but this is the perfect time, right? So if you had your Nature's Notebook, right? You're like, great, this is my site. I have my 3 aspens out here that I'm going to be watching. And right now you would say, no breaking leaf buds, no leaves, no flowers, no fruits. You would say, no, 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 which is the most exciting time of year in the wintertime when we all go out and we look at sticks, right? But that's what is so cool is then you'll actually get to see that moment when they do open up and you'll get to slowly see those changes happening in real time. Oh, swelling leaf, on your mystery trees. I love mystery trees. I'll talk a little bit about some ways to identify mystery trees. Crab apple leaves almost flowering. Oh, so you haven't quite caught that. Oh, forsythia flowers. Oh, I love Master Naturalist programs. We do some training for them. It's wonderful. Elephant food. Hold up. You're going to have to elaborate on elephant food. Elephant food. I used to work at the Reed Park Zoo here in Tucson. So to me, elephant food means mesquite because all the tree trimmers in town, the elephants love the mesquite. So they can trim them and donate them to the zoo so the elephants have things to chew on. So I'm assuming that elephant food means mesquite trees. Oh, and lilacs in St. Paul, Minnesota. Oh, that's wonderful. All right. So now, whoop, whoop, how do I go? Oh, I clicked the wrong button. There we go. All right. So now clearly all of you are experts and all of you ready to be expert citizen science out there. Well, I know that. This is just kind of the basics of how to get started. If you're a little nervous, like I'm not quite sure about Nature's Notebook, I'm not quite sure about phenology, this is here to get you started, right? Here's how you use it. Here's how you get started. Here's the basics of how it works. But we actually have a lot of resources for all of you. So if you go to our website at USA-NPN.org, if you did sign up for an account when you downloaded the Nature's Notebook app earlier, you can use the same account info on the web page. But if you click on Observe with Nature's Notebook at the top, you can go to your observation deck. And here you can also enter your data. But this learning tab here, we have an observer certification course. It's a free course with several learning modules that we have so that you can learn more details about what are the definitions of the phenophases. And once you get in there, it'll say like how many flowers, and you're like, I don't know how many flowers there are, but we'll teach you how to estimate how many flowers there are and how to estimate like what percentage of your leaf canopy is full of leaves. So once again, though, as you're learning, it's okay to learn, embrace the question mark. But we have resources for you to learn more. And it's okay if you leave things blank at first. And it's okay if you put questions mark at first, because you'll go through your whole year of watching your plant, you'll get to know it. And next year, you'll be a little bit wiser and a little bit ready for what's coming up. And you'll really be ready then to really get those observations down and those definitions down. I forgot to put a slide for the plant identification, right? So plant identification, ways to identify plants. There's an app called Seek. It's by iNaturalist. That's my favorite plant identification app. It's not perfect, but it's really good. It uses machine learning where you can actually put your phone up to the plants and it can identify the plants. It never identifies my grasses. It always says grasses. I'm like, yeah, I know it's a grass. But it's really good with leaves. It's really good with flowers. It's really great with insects. But it can help you actually learn to identify your species. If you're still not 100% sure with the app, oh man, go visit your local library. Check out some resources for your local university because they'll often have plant identification keys or resources that you can use to be able to positively identify your plants. And then you're like, great. So I'm observing, this random plant in this random elephant food, right, in my yard. Oh, elephant foot plant. I just like elephant food. I just really like that. Oh, that's cool. Yep, and getting to know your trees on the personal level, right? So yeah, but you're like, okay, great. So I'm collecting these data, and now I've been collecting data for 5 years, but who the heck cares, right? But we have Nature's Notebook campaigns actually, and our campaigns are actually specific pieces of research that scientists are actually looking for. So our Flowers for Bats campaign, if you have saguaros or agaves in Arizona, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is using that data to look at when is nectar available for bat species. Nectar Connectors is a great one if you're a monarch fan or a hummingbird fan, is when nectar plants are available across the United States. The Redbud Phenology Project, redbuds are just charming trees. I just love redbud trees. Those are starting to bloom now. And Quercus Quest, we do have another webinar today for Quercus Quest. Once again, you can take your phone, you can get that picture thing set up, and you can actually register for our webinar later for today. For Quercus Quest, if you can't quite make that second webinar, you should still register for it because we'll have the recording that we're going to provide to all of you so that you can learn more about, especially if you're in the East Coast, the relationship between eastern oak species. At the webinar, you'll actually get to hear from some of those researchers and what they've been learning from the Quercus Quest campaign. So if you're really looking for like, I really want, right, you want to get to know your plant, but some of you really want to make sure that the work that you're collecting is being used for researchers, this is a great way. But also just be aware, all the data available through Nature's Notebook, all this phenology data is available to any researchers or anyone who wants to study phenology. Sometimes people will publish papers using the data that you collect, and we don't even know that they used it until we see that credit for the USA National Phenology Network and the data you collect. So we also post news and updates for papers that have been published using your data. Oh, wrong button again. That's okay. And then, of course, right now it's Phenology Week, and we're happy that you're here joining us today for Phenology Week. But we also have on our Instagram and Facebook page fun Phenology Week challenges to get to know your plant every week. So yesterday, we're like, hey, make a phenology friend, make friend with a plant near you, identify it. Today, we're saying like, hey, get to know your plant a little better, draw it, sketch it, make a clay model. Tomorrow is Wildlife Wednesday. So what animals are interacting with your phenology friend? For Throwback Thursday, right? That used to be a thing, and we want to throwback Thursday, right? But how are you connected to that plant, right? Why is that plant meaningful to you? And then by Friday, has there been any changes since Monday? Did those leaf buds break? So if you can follow us at USA-NPN, and if you give us a mention during Phenology Week, we'll be posting all your pictures of all your phenology friends. So we're really looking forward to seeing all of the plants that you've gotten to know this week. All right, with that, hey, great, perfect. I did good timing. I can be reached at Samantha@usanpn.org. I didn't really go through the animal phenophases because I was like, Sam, we only have an hour and give people time to process the plants. But just so you know, this is a monarch caterpillar, and you can even document that the caterpillar was seen eating in this one. He can definitely be eating, but that's some of the phenophases you can document. Here we've got a very good example of when you'd say yes for flowers, but no for open flowers on the milkweed. But right now I'd be happy to take any questions that you guys have. If you have specific questions about like, if you're like, wait, I'm not 100% sure on this app, actually, if you put that in the chat, I could help walk you through anything that you might need help with. Oh, it's faded out and you can't reduce it inside. I have no idea. That is a strange troubleshooting thing. And if you want, that might be one to send me an email about, because that might be a technical issue with the phone, or it might be, yeah, I'm not sure. You have to send me some info about your phone to be able to help you out with that one. But I'm glad like you guys are looking forward to getting know your trees. I love getting to know my trees too, and all my little plants. Thank you. Yeah, we had fun finding these webinars. It's really nice to be able to get to know you guys, and right, it's funny because I spend a lot of time at my computer teaching other people how to go outside. But man, if any of you are even like, I'll just send you a random picture, Sam, of my plants. I love random pictures of plants with bluebirds and all those things. Anytime you need help, just feel free to reach out. Thank you guys. Happy Phenology Week. Oh, the west part of the country. Oh, west part of the country can help out too. So even though Quercus Quest is an example of one that they're only that the researchers are looking at the oaks on the east side, you can still collect oak data on the west side. It's just we don't know when researchers would be using that. Sometimes it's funny too, because phenology data, you really want to get that long-term data, right? Because if I just go out for 1 year and this is when the leaves appeared, right? Like that's cool, but you don't know if it's a pattern unless you get multiple years of data. And so sometimes you'll get some of these plants where researchers are like, hey, we want to know what the patterns are in oak species. Well, look, people on the West Coast have been collecting these data for 5 years now, and they can still use it. And it's actually better that way because then you have more years of data. Quercus Quest, yeah, white oaks, live oaks, chinkapin oaks. If you actually go to our website at USA-NPN.org, if you look at our campaigns and the Quercus Quest campaign, it actually has the list of all the species that the researchers are using. But I know white oaks and live oaks are on there. And Erin put the link for the campaigns there as well. best. Erin even got all of them on there for you guys in the chat. There's the whole sheet, man. She's like on it. She's like, no, I got you. Here's all the oaks that we're doing. Thank you. All right, I'll stop recording now so that, yeah. But thank you all for joining us. We look forward to seeing you again. I'll still stick around just in case anyone did want to linger with questions, even though I'm not recording anymore. I do have a few minutes where I can stick around and just awkward pause until you have the chance to ask your question. Now's your moment. I'm gonna hit end. Thank you all again. I've had one question. Paula, send me an email. I can get you going on that. We just started it. I can still include you, Paula. So send me an email. I'll put it in here again. But I can get you connected with that. It's not too late. It is never too late, honestly. I like helping you guys out. And yes, thank you. Send me the email with the screenshot so I can see what's going on with your phone. All right, that's it for Reels. Thank you all. We'll see you later.